In this chapter, we're going to look at social identity leadership, which is a leadership theory that's very different than other leadership theories. So how would we describe what social identity leadership is? First of all, this approach to leadership is follower-centric. It's concerned with group members and how a leader will emerge from that group, how a group without a leader might choose a leader. So it's basically answering the question, when will a group let someone lead them? In other leadership theories, we're typically asking the question, what should a leader do to be effective and to influence a group to achieve the organization's goals? Here, we're focusing on, well, when will a group let someone lead them? So this is a novel approach to describe leadership, and it's an extension of social identity theory. So we should understand what social identity theory is. Well, to understand social identity theory, we need to, first of all, understand what is an identity. An identity is one's theory of who I am. So it's a set of beliefs. It's my identity is my beliefs about me. What is true about me? What is not true about me? And that's what my identity is. Now, there's two parts to my identity. There's my personal identity. That is, who am I, Dave Dunnett? How am I different from others? What are my strengths? What are my weaknesses? What do I value that not everybody else values? But then there's also my social identity. And the social identity is, how am I similar to others? Not how am I different from others? How am I similar to others? And who am I similar to? And we often base this part of our identity on the characteristics of the groups to which we belong. So I belong to a lot of groups. I belong to the Department of Leadership and Organizational Psychology. I belong to the School of Business and Management at my university. I belong to my university. I belong to the state of California. And all of these groups have certain characteristics, and if I'm thinking about those and that I'm a part of these groups, I will be saying, yeah, this is what I'm like, because I'm part of the group. Now, I might also think, well, I'm different from others in the group, but that's part of my personal identity. But my social identity is, how am I similar to the people in the groups that I identify with? Now, our beliefs are the different aspects of our identity become salient in different contexts. So we start off here on this top picture. We've got context one, and we've got two women, Amy and Beth, and they're walking together. It's just Amy and Beth. And here, what's salient, what stands out, is their personal identity. Beth is thinking about Amy and might be thinking, okay, this is what I think. I'm going to share this with Amy. Then Amy shares what she thinks with Beth, and they share their ideas with each other. But in a different context, where Amy and Beth are still together, but they come across two men, their social identity might come into play. They say, aha, we're the group of women. There's a group of men there. How are women supposed to act? That's how we will act. Or how are women? That's how we are. We're not like them. So we have our personal identity, we have our social identity, but the different beliefs become salient in different contexts. Now, another aspect of social identity is that our group membership and self-esteem, how positively we think about ourselves, are closely related. And we tend to develop beliefs about ourselves that make us feel good about who we are. That's a bias that we have as human beings, is we want to see ourselves as good people. So we develop beliefs that confirm those the good things about us. And so, and when that doesn't happen, things go haywire. We say that people have mental health issues, that they're depressed, that things aren't going well for them. But then the normal human tends to develop beliefs about themselves that makes them feel good about who they are. And one way that we manage our self-esteem is by managing our group memberships. We we can choose our group memberships to increase our self-esteem. So if we see a bunch of cool people that have their act together that are really successful, we'd say, oh, I'd like to be part of that group. If we see another group where everybody's a loser, a failure, they've got all kinds of problems in life, we say, oh, maybe I'd like to avoid that group. Another way of looking at this is that we want to manage our status. And status can be defined as our perceived competence. We want people to think that we're competent individuals that can be successful and do things right. And so we want to be part of groups where people are perceived as being competent. For example, people that have a degree from such and such a university will be perceived as competent, therefore, I want this degree. But if there's a group where people are perceived to be incompetent, to not be capable of doing what's right or good, we want to avoid being members of that group. Now, note that this is just perceived competence. It's not actual competence, which might be completely independent of group membership. But because we want to be perceived as competent, we that influences what groups we join. Now, some groups and identities we don't get to choose. We can't change them. We can't choose to go to this school or to get that degree. But things like our demographics, our family, and the such, we can't change. So in that case, rather than changing what groups we belong to, we tend to emphasize different characteristics. We look at the strengths of these groups, the high status traits that the groups are really good at, rather than the weaknesses of the group, the low status traits. So these ideas are all part of social identity theory that describe how people's beliefs about themselves are related to the groups that they belong to. Now, this creates some common social identity processes, things that are very predictable that we see in humans over and over again. One of them is in-group favoritism. And that's the idea that, oh, people like us are better than others. We tend to think that people in our group are superior in some dimensions. Whatever those dimensions are, we tend to think that those dimensions are important. And so we will favoritize people in our group, and then the similar phenomena for people that are not in our group is called outgroup derogation, and that's the idea, oh, people like them are flawed, they don't deserve the good things that we deserve, they deserve what they get, they've got problems, and it's their fault. And so now you start thinking about this, in-group favoritism and out-group derogation can really turn bad very, very quickly. It can be used to do harm to other people because they deserve it, because they're not like us. There can also be some harmless social identity processes too. One is called basking in reflected glory, or burging. See, BIRG, basking in reflected glory. And that's when our group does well, we're more likely to emphasize our affiliation with that group. For example, if studies have been done on university students, and in America, a lot of universities, especially big universities, have American football teams that play every weekend during the fall. And studies have shown that if the American football team of the university does well one weekend, on Monday, there'll be lots and lots of people that will wear sweatshirts and t-shirts, indicating that they're part of their university. But that the opposite occurs when the football team loses. People won't wear the sweatshirts. They won't wear the t-shirts. They won't wear the bling that's associated with their university. And so that's called basking in reflected glory. When our group does well, we want to emphasize being part of that group. When our group does poorly, we want to hide our membership in that group. So these are some common social identity processes that are described by social identity theory. Okay, so let's get back to social identity leadership. And so we're going to ask the question, when will followers accept a leader's direction? When will leadership emerge? And we've got this figure in the textbook, a four-dimensional model of social identity management. What can a person do to manage people's social identity and rise up as a leader among people? And we're going to start here with being one of us. And this is called identity prototypicality. Now, what do we mean by this? A prototype is the model of what something should be. And in social identity leadership, it predicts that the people that are the prototype of what a group wants are the most likely to be selected as a leader. So they see somebody who's really good, who's got all kinds of positive traits, who's got a great vision, and they say, "Oh yeah, that's what we want as a leader. We want to be like them. They're the one to lead us in that direction." So prototypicality, being a prototype, is super important in social identity leadership. Now we go down here, and whatever they recommend, they're saying, hey, this is for us. This is for our group. This is what will be good for our group. And this is called identity advancement. It means that whatever group you're in, this leader can promise to make the group even better, get better things for the group, and advance the group in a direction that it wants to go. Over here, we've got this crafting a sense of us, or this idea of identity entrepreneurship. Sometimes groups aren't very well defined. It's not clear who's in a group, who's not in a group, but part of social identity management is clearly identifying what the group is. This could take place in an organization where the group might be a rough ad hoc committee or something, but the leader will say, yeah, we've got this special task, we've been entrusted with this, we are a group and we need to act together on this. And then the fourth thing is making us matter. And this is called identity impresarioship. Now, what in the world is impresarioship? An impresario is someone who organizes a show or an activity. It's this idea of organizing activities to show that the group matters. And that can be as simple as like organizing a party for the group, or more complex as having a big event that will cast the vision for what the group could be. But the idea of creating these special events that show that the group is important and that it matters. And in these events, there's especially this opportunity of promoting that the leader will do what's best for the group, and that they really do have an identity, the identity entrepreneurship. So this creates a sense of we and us, and a vision of what we and us can become, and so people are likely to accept the leader's direction when they can do all of these things. Now here's a model of how social identity leadership can work. So we start off on the left here with a bunch of group of people, some that have different characteristics, but some people who might have the same characteristics start hanging around with each other. And so that creates a shared social identity. Now, the group doesn't especially have any goals or things like that, but a leader who starts doing these four, demonstrates these four behaviors, the prototypicality being one of us, and they stand out as a model of what the group wants to become. If the leader can convince the group that he's got some goals that are going to, he or she's got some goals that are going to be good for the group, and if the leader crafts a sense of us through the entrepreneurship of identity, and then creating activities through impresarioship, making us matter, that group can choose that person as the leader, the natural person that they would want to lead them. And so that's what this black line in the center is going, is that the group will choose the leader, but then so they're influencing the leader, but the leader also influences group members because the leader clarifies what the vision of the group is, what the group should be doing, and that causes the group to work towards the leader's goals, which are the outcomes. Now, let's look at the strengths and the weaknesses of this approach, the social identity approach to leadership. So it's unique compared to other leadership approaches. It really puts an emphasis on followers and leadership emergence there. It describes accurately why and how some people rise to leadership positions. How do politicians emerge from all the millions of people in a democracy? When there's an informal group, how do leaders arise? Well, they are the prototype of what the group wants to become. And it accurately describes why some people fail in leadership positions. After they become leader, the group looks at them, gets to know them better, and says, "Huh? That is not what we want." They really aren't a prototype, and the leader is rejected. So it describes a lot of leadership phenomena really well. But there are also a lot of weaknesses and some criticisms of social identity theory. First of all, it's applicable more to emergent leadership, where you've got just a group that doesn't have a leader assigned to it, but leaders emerge. It's more applicable to emergent leadership than to assigned leadership, where somebody is appointed to be in charge of this group, which is typically what happens in most organizational contexts. But the biggest problem, especially from my point of view, is that it is easily exploited for evil purposes. An awful lot of these social identity purposes, a lot of these social identity processes can be used for bad purposes, to squash, to hurt people that are not in your in-group. And if you look at history, almost all real life evil leaders like Hitler have used social identity processes to achieve their goals. If you choose almost any leader that's universally considered bad, you'll see that they've used social identity processes to get a group to feel like, oh, our group needs something better. We need to suppress some other group. We need more things for us, less things for these other groups who deserve to be punished or killed or whatever. Now, notice how I say that that's true for real life evil leaders. This isn't true for Hollywood evil leaders that we see in movies. In movies, evil leaders are evil for the sake of evil because they want to do evil things. But in real life, leaders who get classified as evil and horrible and just disasters for humanity, they want to do positive things for their in-group, which, due to social identity processes, often takes the form of doing evil and hurting other groups. So that's not necessarily what you see in the movies. In fact, you usually don't see that in movies. But in real life, that's the process by which evil leaders end up doing evil. So, how can we use social identity processes? And hopefully, how can you use them for good and not evil? Because these can be used for good also. And these are represented by the three R's. The first R is reflecting. So the aspiring leader or the emerging leader listens and observes and learns about the group and its social context, its strengths, and what who they are, what makes them unique. So that's the reflecting, the listening part. And then the leader represents the group through the actions, beliefs, and language that reflect and advance the group's values and goals. Now, this works out really good if the groups want to do things that are good, especially for doing good to people outside of the group. If they just want to do good to themselves and think that other people don't deserve it, this is where things can go really, really bad. So the leader presents ideas that show the group that they can do good things. And then the third R is realizing, so that the leader facilitates the group's achievements. It manages the group so that it can accomplish its goals in the creation of a social world where it can live according to its values, which are hopefully good and hopefully inclusive of other people. But you can see how it can go really bad if it's not. So these are some ideas that you can use when you're in a group and you think that it would be, you can provide constructive, positive, healthy, ethical leadership to the group. Now, as you probably know, I usually end these videos with a Christian application. And the Christian application for social identity theory is that because leaders, politicians, religious leaders, etc., can use social identities to benefit themselves or exploit others, we need to make sure that we don't make them as our prototype. As Christians, we need to make sure that Jesus is our prototype and he remains our prototype, and that we don't put our blind faith in humans or lift them up as prototypes where we can become blinded to abuses that they can make. And the Bible says there is neither Jew nor Gentile. So Gentiles are people who are not Jewish. That was the main ethnic groups in the context that the Bible was written. Neither slave nor free, nor is there male and female, for you are all one in Christ Jesus. For the Christian, our social identities don't matter. Those aren't the things that we're supposed to make salient, but our unity, our relationship with Jesus Christ, our reconciliation with God is what's supposed to be the central aspect of our identity. And Jesus himself, who was ethically without reproach and calls us to a life of love and service, is our prototype.